In this short class, we're going to deal with some very important issues. It's worthwhile considering this class in much more detail and reflecting upon the contents of the class afterwards, perhaps viewing the class a few times. But what we're going to deal with here is the market system and see what problems it may suffer from. Really, we're talking here about issues associated with the freedom of the market versus control of the market. We're looking at the extent to which producers should be free to produce the goods and services that they want, and the extent to which the government intervenes to regulate and to control production and, if you like, to control capitalism. So we're going to deal with some very fundamental issues, and it's important just to be aware of that before we get involved in it. The first issue that we confront is the distribution of income. The market system rewards the more capable members of the workforce, and this may lead to an uneven distribution of income. Over time, the distribution of income may become extremely wide, and it poses a problem for the government to see what it can do to help the less well off. Now, clearly, there's a function for education involved in this. Clearly, there's a function for skill development and retraining and training and so on. But really, there's an issue of the extent to which the distribution of income should be allowed to continue to widen. Some people are very capable in work. Some people are very capable of working in the financial sector or working for companies or engineers or whatever. And they are very capable and they earn large sums of money. Some people don't earn large sums of money, so the distribution of income becomes wider in society. And it's felt by many thinkers that when a society has very wide discrepancy between the rich and the poor, that society is facing problems. The society could have faced rioting or claims of unfairness or whatever. So the government could intervene and could perhaps redistribute income by taxation, and we'll encounter this again. But the point is, it could redistribute income by taxation. It could tax the very high earners. But then the problem is the high earners would immigrate and leave the country, and the country would be poorer because we've lost skilled workers. Or it could be the workers will work less hard. They now have a disincentive to work hard. So productivity may fall. We want people to work hard, but it may be felt by some that the distribution of income needs to be corrected as well. The problem is how to do it without damaging some other part of the economy. So, for example, imposing much higher income tax on the high earners may, as I said, lead to disincentives to work. People may have more days off work or not work too hard when they're there because they don't see it worthwhile. Why should they work very hard to pay it to the government? So the market system generates wide distribution of income, but on the other hand, how to deal with that is an issue. And this is one that's often debated by politicians and it's often debated in the press. There's no easy answer. There's also the problem of what's known as unintended consequences. Some argue that we should not interfere with the market since such intervention will cause distortions and raise further problems. So sometimes when the government intervenes to control the market, something else happens, something which was unanticipated. An unintended consequence arises. Take the example we had earlier with the distribution of income. The government wants to help the poor by redistributing income from the rich to the poor. So it taxes the rich to give to the poor. But by taxing the rich leave the country. That's an unintended consequence. That's not what the government intended. The government intended for the rich to pay more tax, not to leave the country. Or it could be the people working who are paying higher tax decide to work less hard. They have a disincentive to work. That's not what the government intended. That's an unintended consequence. That means that the government, in trying to help the poor, has caused an even bigger problem. Because now, not only are the poor not getting help, because the rich are not paying as much tax, that's even if the rich haven't left the country, but it's also the case that there was a non-intended consequence. That's not what the government intended. That's not what the government meant. So all the time, when a decision is made, there may be unintended consequences. Something else may happen, which was not the intention, but happened anyway. Then there's the issue, should the government intervene in the market to stop the production and sale of all goods? Or should just some goods be allowed, or what goods should be allowed? For example, can companies just open up and start making explosives? Or, say, refining drugs? Well, we would see the drugs as illegal, so that would be the production of an illegal commodity, so that wouldn't be condoned. So the government has already covered the possibility of drug production. That's illegal and that's not allowed. So clearly companies can't produce anything they want. But should they be allowed to produce explosives? Well, explosives are only produced under license. The government has to approve who makes explosives, and they have to be controlled for obvious reasons. They're dangerous, and in the wrong hands they can be very, very dangerous indeed. So there's an issue then about the government controlling the free market economy. People can't just produce what they want. It has to be controlled. And it's controlled in the interest of the society. Some products or services are not allowed for social, religious and cultural reasons as well. So sometimes products are undesirable. They may be legal, but they're not desirable. So governments may not promote those products or promote those companies or condone that production. They may even outright ban it because the products being produced are not seen as desirable for various reasons, various sociological reasons. We'd have to find examples of that. None spring to mind at the moment, but I'm sure there are some. The government may intervene in production because of health and safety issues. Sometimes companies are banned from production because they've got poor health and safety records. The company is not careful about how it's produced, or the product itself, although legal and does not offend anybody and it's quite acceptable, it's dangerous to make it. It could involve processes that are quite hazardous. For example, molten steel or molten metals, or dealing with acids, or so products can be dangerous to manufacture, and for that reason the government may intervene to control the product and control how it's produced for health and safety reasons. It's like there's a mistrust of the management. The management are not capable of dealing with this, or alternatively the management don't really care because they're just interested in profits and interested in the outcome, the financial outcome at the end. So as to enable workers to work in safe environments and to be able to earn a living without jeopardizing their health or their safety, there may be health and safety regulations imposed. Now, not all countries will have this. Some countries don't, and some countries just allow companies to do more or less as they want. but in many countries, and in an increasing number of countries, there's greater emphasis on health and safety. The government may intervene in the free functioning of the market to prevent producers from marketing faulty goods or dangerous goods. For example, it's important that car manufacturers make safe cars which work properly. Their brakes work and the engines are reliable. They're not going to explode or not going to hurt the owner who bought the good in good faith. So the government may step in to regulate faulty production or dangerous goods to make sure that products that are sold, particularly to children as well, make sure that the parts on products sold to children are not loose and they can't be swallowed, or the paint on the toys is not dangerous. If the child manages to eat or bite off some part of it, it's not going to poison them, and so on. So the government may intervene and have regulations to make sure that producers produce safely. It may also require producers to provide information about the product so that the consumer with the necessary information is able to make a rational decision. For example, in foodstuffs, governments try to get the producers to produce a list of contents. Some people may have a nut allergy, for example, and a nut allergy is dangerous. So if an item contains nuts, it should specify it does, so that those people do not innocently consume the product and have perhaps major medical conditions. But food items would be controlled, for example, or would have information published about them. And the government is always trying to promote this type of information on the products so that consumers can understand what is in the product, what the product is made from, how long the product can be kept without being used if it's a food item, and so on. So consumers have more information upon which to base their decision. They're not working from a position of ignorance and using their scarce resource, using their incomes to buy products that they don't know very much about. The government attempts to ensure that there is effective competition in the system, to ensure low prices and wide consumer choice. Well, governments try to punish monopolists. Monopolists are single sellers. Now, sometimes monopoly is natural, that the markets can only have a single supplier. For example, perhaps water supply. The water supply comes through pipes, and the pipes will be owned by a company, chances are. Then, if it's not conceivable having several sets of pipes carrying water to houses so that there is effective competition. It's not economic to have a lot of suppliers with different pipes going into the house and consumers deciding which supplier to buy from today. So sometimes monopolists may become natural. Now this is dealt with again in a separate video, so I'm just generally talking about it in this one. But it is important that the competitive system is maintained. It's through competition that we get lower prices. So the government is always trying to get industry to be competitive. And the more competitive it is, the more companies have to work to try and outwit each other, have better designs, better customer service, lower prices, better experience for the customer, better value for money. So these issues are associated with competition. This was highlighted by the famous Scottish economist Adam Smith, who was really the father of economics. And he highlighted it back in 1776 in his book, The Wealth of Nations. He talked about the importance of competition, the importance of how items can come into existence. He called it by the operation of what he described as the invisible hand. That we go to shops and the items that we like or want in the shops, they're there on the shelf waiting for us. It's as if an invisible hand had put them there. Well, the reason why they're there, we know, is the product of careful planning and competition and so on. But if one company dominated the market, then there would be restricted choice. There would be higher prices and perhaps to be less innovation and less change in the product. So the government tries to get effective competition, to get more than one company producing. Now what I've done here, I've got to the end of this class, so what I've done is I've talked about some of the issues, some of the problems with the market system. Sometimes we talk about the market system like it's near perfect and it generates high levels of output at cheap prices for the consumer, and it encourages innovation and change and so on. And it does. But just sometimes we have to recognize there are some areas where perhaps the markets need to be regulated or nudged gently in a particular direction. And I've highlighted some of the areas in which this may happen. But that's all I'm going to deal with in this session, so let's leave this video for now and say thank you for watching.